Welcome to Beyond Work, a series by Forbes DACH where we uncover the major shifts in our future work lives. My name is Olivia Chang, and on this show, I'll be speaking to all the business leaders and entrepreneurs who are driving this movement. Today on the program, I'd like to welcome Nikolay Kolev, who's the head of WeWork over in Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. Nikolay, why don't you paint us a picture of your day-to-day work life right now? Are you working from home or working from WeWork?
Look, my day-to-day has obviously changed, as I guess for everyone else out there, right? So in a pre-pandemic world, I was traveling almost every day, Nordics and Central Europe and Eastern Europe and all those places, including our headquarters in New York, which obviously right now is densed down to very few locations, a split between, right now, I'm in our WeWork office in Munich. So it's a split between home and the office, but it's significantly less travel, obviously.
We are hearing the words future of work, new work all the time. What is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear this phrase?
The first thing that comes to mind is that future of work and the new normality cannot be how do we go back to normal, right? So a backwards will never be the answer of what is the future of work. I think it requires a bit of, a bit less anxiety, less feeling in the old safe environment, but rather being open-minded and redefining things and taking it as a chance. Because obviously we are right now in a massive breakdown, but how do we use this as a chance for a breakthrough? If you take, for example, how many more people today are using flex space as an alternative as compared to a couple of months ago, that's a real breakthrough for a lot of people, being in a different environment, having the chance to work together, right?
We're not only in the middle of a breakdown, but in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. Many more people are staying at home and there's a lot more social distancing. So what is that all going to mean for the future of the co-working business model then?
It's a very good question. I mean, we're just, as you and I speak, literally either starting or ready for day 2 in a second wave of partial or complete lockdown. Now, what does it mean for the future of co-working? I think there's a wider context to that. What does it mean for the future of work? How do people actually go back to work? How do we redefine the parameters under which people can work, right? And I think for co-working, there are 3 main things that we at the moment try and be there as a partner predominantly for larger companies. First of all, de-densified space, right? They need to de-densify their current environment in order to be able to bring people back to work. Secondly, provide a space where still a combination of connectivity, work together as a team, as a group, and distanced work is possible. And thirdly, a space where all the sanitization, all the health restrictions and measures are kept day in, day out across the globe. I think that's extremely important so that people can rely that their company is taking care of all those measures wherever they go equally.
So do you see a boom or bust story going with the co-working space or somewhere in the middle?
A boom or bust would be obviously a much greater headline. I agree. But what I do see is, look, in a pre-pandemic world, the flex space within commercial real estate was somewhere between 2, 4, 5%, depending on where you were in the world. In a post-pandemic world, we see this grow to 20, 30% of commercial real estate, because a lot of the large companies that either used it only for their digital divisions or innovation divisions are actually looking at flexible space, what we call hub and spoke model, where you can just be close to your home and be safely in a professional environment, as a real alternative. So I see it rather as a real boost than a bust.
I know that you're currently based at the WeWork space in Munich. Can you just describe to us what the atmosphere and feeling is like being there? And what is the demand that you have seen throughout the whole pandemic?
Yes, of course. It's already through the first lockdown, it was a question of how do we manage on the one hand, of course, to comply with all the government restrictions that vary. We have different restrictions in Norway than we have at the moment in Germany or in Austria, different in the UK and in France and so on. So on the one hand, making sure that we're in each and every country compliant with what the government suggests. On the other hand, for some of the businesses, for some essential businesses working, for example, we have in New York and in other places, startups working on a vaccine, for example, and we are their only office. So they need to have access. So this balance is something that we take very seriously, to remain open for our members who really need us. And at the same time, obviously, there are less people in our buildings, I guess in any building during a lockdown. But at the same time, we have a very strong feedback that people actually want to come back to the office. When you're locked at home for 4 weeks, people just, it's less productive. It's less of a split between private and business. So, and it kind of gets tense. So we're definitely here. We're keeping the buildings open and safe for everyone who needs to come and work and fulfill his duties.
But regardless of whether people actually want to go back to co-working spaces or not, Europe is currently dealing with the second wave. As we speak, there are heightened restrictions in Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. So how are you trying to navigate this? And are you just left with a bunch of empty offices?
First of all, as I just said, we are absolutely in line with government restrictions and recommendations. Actually, in some countries, we go beyond that, where we feel that for the safety of our members and of our own people, it is required. For example, in some countries, we've been suggesting in the common space to wear masks before it was recommended and required by the government. Now, the lockdown is a 2-week, 4-week period. In this period, again, we remain open for everyone who needs our space. Of course, there are less people than we just had last week, right, when there was no lockdown. So we've seen also throughout the first lockdown a reduction in people in our buildings, but we also see it coming very quickly back up immediately after the lockdown. That's what we've seen over the last few months, and that's what we expect to see towards the end of November.
Do you actually foresee a big shift in the types of people who actually want to use the co-working spaces, and what could those potential clients look like in the future?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think there are three different components to this. One is, of course, we expect and we invite our members back after the lockdown, right? The second thing is, we do see a significant increase in our enterprise business. So all the large corporations, so people who actually were not in the traditional member base, a lot more of those are coming for the reasons that I just explained, for de-densification and just using this as an alternative. There's a third group, which through on-demand and all access to additional products that we just launched, where we give people literally access everywhere and anywhere to our assets. So it means that we will see a lot more people who are not from that city, not from that building, actually use this wherever it's closest, most convenient and safe for them. So absolutely.
Well, as we speak, many people are also upgrading and optimizing their own home offices. In the future, how can WeWork convince people to not only leave their home, but pay for a desk at their space?
Look, I don't think it's on us to convince people. I think when you look, let's say a couple of months, a year ahead, we see a triangle of what the post-pandemic world looks like. One is, yes, people will work from home for sure, for a day, maybe 2. And then the rest of the time, they will work from a flexible space near their home, and then maybe here and there check into their headquarters. So we don't want to convince people to work only from a flex space, but what we do want is, we want people to work in a professional environment. When you work from home, tech needs to be in a way that you can work, right? Your internet needs to be secure, all those things, all the basics. At the same time, we want to make sure that people are in a safe environment. where they, I mean, it is safe to say that the safest place right now is the workplace. The infections are all happening, or the majority of infection is happening in private context, when people go to parties, when people mingle. So we want to make sure that we provide a safe space. That's why whoever wants to work from home and then work from our space, they're most invited. But we're not going to try and convince everyone to come to the flex space.
There are still government restrictions, however, telling people to work from home though.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's what we also invite our staff, right? Not only our members. Whoever in those lockdown times can work from home should do so. But whoever needs, because they have essential business to do and they cannot do it out of home, they are most welcome to do it from our office. We keep it open and safe. Absolutely.
Will WeWork continue to expand not only in DACH, but in Europe, or could we potentially foresee some downsizing in the near future?
We've seen a very much step-by-step approach over the last few months, where we just go with our 5-year financial plan and our strategy. And this 5-year financial plan and strategy absolutely includes to further increase our presence, right? So we're just opening in 4 weeks from now, we are opening our next building in Amsterdam. In a couple of weeks, we are opening actually 2 more buildings here in Munich, in Berlin. So we do continue to expand, but all of this is happening under the guideline of profitable growth. This is the change to what used to be a year ago. So yes, we continue to grow. Just because when you look at 20 to 30% required flex space in the commercial real estate, we don't have that space yet. So we need to grow with the demand of our members, which is increasing at the moment.
In 2025, what do you expect the standard office to look like?
I would be happy if anyone could tell us what 2021 would look like. You're asking about 2025. No, in all seriousness, I think, first of all, let's hope that we'll get very quickly through this health pandemic, and then make sure that we don't get into an economic pandemic, right? So I think this triangle, everyone figuring out for themselves, depending on the industry they're in, depending on the location they're in, really figuring out what's the best way between the triangle. Is it a day from home, 3 days from flex space close to home, and a day with the colleagues at the HQ, or is it a different one? And I think between those 3, people will figure out for them what the best model is. But let me just close with one positive note, right? Because I think there's a lot of negative and downside from this pandemic, that's clear. But if you look at how CO2 emissions, how mobility could be reduced by just shortening the way from home to work, that's incredible. All these heart attack situations that we experience every morning and every evening in big cities where traffic really stands, all of that could be avoided by really using a hub and spoke model. Take the bike, go to a place which is close to home to work from there. So I think there's a lot of upside when we reimagine the future of work.
Well, Nikolay, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of experimentation over the next few years to find the perfect model. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.